All right, we got Vic Clevenger here. He's been working for SeaWorld for
9 years.
He's been working for SeaWorld for 9 years. We're about to interview him about the company culture and organization.
Hey, Vic.
Hey, man.
Hey, first off, how would you describe the organizational culture at SeaWorld?
Well, the organizational culture, it's pretty diverse. You have the bottom rung of people who are the frontliners, as opposed to the leadership. And just went blank on my train of thought.
No worries.
There's a lot. At one time, there was a lot of steps to get moved up, and there was a lot of top heaviness. So it was very frustrating getting stuff communicated from bottom to top. Now they've trimmed that down. So as far as communication culture goes, and the organizational structure of the place, it's gotten a lot better, a lot easier to get to the top.
Well, would you say it's relaxed or rigid?
More relaxed.
More relaxed and rigid. Okay. Would you say that your organization has a diverse spread of employees?
Oh yeah, we've got people from all ages, all cultures, genders, which there's only 2 genders, I guess. So we've got them all. And but it's pretty diverse. Being an equal opportunity employer that SeaWorld is, you can't really discriminate against anybody. And we do have a great cross section of employees, even people who have from Great Britain who have moved over here on their visas, their work visas.
Do you think it affects the organization in any way, this diversity?
I think it does. I think it makes us a more worldwide organization, as opposed to not to slam Gatorland or nothing. But Gatorland it gives the impression of a more local park, something that you just find as a neighborhood place, as opposed to SeaWorld or some of the others that are so diverse with such a wide range of employees, from backgrounds to cultures to religions, everything.
Okay. How would you describe your relationship between you and your coworkers?
Between me and my coworkers, I would say it's pretty good. I've been there 9 years, so a lot of them look to me for some sort of leadership, and although I don't get paid near enough for that. But I think it's pretty good. They look to me, not to sound bragging or big, I think they look to me more as a mentor as far as our position goes, and being around, and as old as I am, they see me as having a little bit of experience. As some of the other, and even some of the other departments, because I have been there so long, come to me with questions. They'll bypass somebody that's a little newer, somebody they don't really recognize, and come to me with a question with somebody else that I've trained, or somebody else is trained to actually answer the question as well as I could. But because of my standing in the park, I think a lot of people look to me, and I think they like me pretty well. We have a good time.
Yeah. Do you socialize outside of the workplace?
With the people I work with?
Yes.
On occasion. I've gone to a party here or there. I've come to a local bar once in a while. And as a sideline job where I do comedy, several of them come to some of my shows on the weekends. So we all have a pretty good relationship outside of work.
How would you describe the relationship between you and your managers?
Depends on the day. It's a definite, and it's sad to say, at one time it wasn't this way, but it has gotten to be more of an us and them type of relationship, not just with me and management, but with lower rung employees and management. The management communication is not as clear to the employees as they want, and even amongst the management. Suppose one day you give one direction, and then the next management, who's your peer, gives on that same topic a whole different direction. So even the management aren't on the same pages oftentimes, which makes it frustrating when you actually need to get stuff done. As far as day-to-day operations, we don't need management involved in what we do at all, but occasionally we do have to come to management for a question or clarification, and depending on who's in the management office, depends on which answer you get oftentimes.
Right. How would you describe the relationship between departments at your organization in terms of whether they work well together achieving a common goal for the company, or do they kind of step on each other's toes?
Well, I think in the department I'm in, and I'll just give you a plain example. I had a management assistant supervisor in a different department come up and ask me why my manager wanted them to cover for us when our assistant supervisors wasn't around. But when that particular department wanted something from our department, our manager told them no. So our manager wanted that department to help us, but he wasn't willing to help the other department. So I believe there's a strained relationship between our department and a lot of the other departments. Not necessarily on the ground level employees, but from the management level. I think our park does a great job at separating us frontline employees from the management who makes some of the decisions that we consider on some subjects pretty asinine.
I see. What kind of values does the organization hold itself standard to and try to instill in its employees?
On the surface, publicly, they hold themselves to a high standard. And when it comes to being SeaWorld, it comes to the animals, they hold themselves to a high standard in taking care of the animals and the positive reinforcement that they use. When you look at SeaWorld and their caretaking of the animals, it's very positive. They're not going to do like a bunch of cowboys. If you don't get a cow, you go the right direction, you hit it with a whip or a cattle prod to get it to go. They don't do that at SeaWorld. SeaWorld is, if the whale or a dolphin or something is not doing the right thing, they kind of step back and kind of ignore it a little bit, but then they reward when they do the behavior or trick the way they want it done. So they reward it. And when it comes to the employees, that's not always the case. Now, you do have to correct employees when it comes to infractions, but oftentimes you get your management who give the impression that they would rather give disciplinary action as opposed to incentive action. As far as a reward, they'd rather give a write-up for a negative than a write-up for a positive. And you'll find, not necessarily just at SeaWorld, but I believe in a lot of organizations, more people get more write-ups on the negative and get called into offices more on the negative than they ever do for doing what's right. Which, when you come to the animals, going back to SeaWorld, you come to the animals, it's rewarding the animals for what's right. When it comes to the employees, we hit them where they've done something wrong, and sometimes they don't even know they've done it wrong until they get hit with something.
Can you think of any traditions you have in your department? How long have they been in place, if so?
Not really traditions. We have routines that we do. You know, we all have our own little quirks. I have a certain way that I set my station up and my area up when I open up in the mornings. People have other things. But as far as traditions, it's hard to say that we have any kind of real traditions. We do have, on a company-wide basis, we have the annual beach cleanup that I think some of the people would be upset if we ever got rid of that. Where we go to Cocoa or one of the other beaches and just kind of just sweep it and take it up and stuff. I think as far as traditions go, we don't really have too many traditions that we're attached to.
In terms of your organization structure as an employee, do you believe it is run in an efficient and effective manner?
I believe management thinks it is.
What is that?
I think management sometimes, and this is, in a way, it's their own fault, and in a way, it's not. Management sometimes moves, as you move up a corporate ladder, you move further and further away from the front line when things actually take place, and you're more in a secluded area. And I think management oftentimes feels that they are secluded, that they are in touch when in fact they're not. But I think repeat the question again, because I think I got myself off track.
I said, do you, in terms of your organization structure, do you believe it is run in an efficient?
I think there's always room for improvement, no matter how well an organization is run. I think when you get into management and they seclude themselves off in the front line, they don't realize how inefficient they are. As I was telling an employee who's now leaving to go to marketing, John, you always got to look at your company, no matter how high you get, as if you're a customer. When you come in, whether it's marketing or whether you're walking into a front gate of the park, always look at your company through the eyes of a visitor. Too oftentimes, employees and management look at the company because they already know something. That's the reason why when you see in directives or when you see in PowerPoints and things, you'll see a lot of initials. And sometimes this stuff gets out to the public and it's like, what are they talking about? but we know what they're talking about because we know what the initials stand for, but oftentimes the public doesn't. And I take, as an example, the magazine that just came out from Orange County, California. The magazine's called Where, W-H-E-R-E, and what it talks about is where in Orange County, L.A., California, where in Orange County is there things to do. And on the cover of Where magazine is this beautiful girl, and her head is right in the center of where the E is on the magazine. So it looks like W-H-O-R-E. Well, the people who did this cover of the magazine, they know it says Where. But me, who doesn't know what this magazine is until it's explained to me later, think, what kind of magazine is this? And at first glance, you think this is a pornographic magazine, when in fact it's not. It's an event magazine. Because people, they subliminally know what it says, but they're looking through management eyes or employee eyes rather than what the customers see.
As a long-term employee, you said 9 years. Do you feel that your organization clearly presents its long-term goals to you and your other employees, so you may take steps to help achieve them? And if so, what is the primary long-term goal this company plans to achieve?
I don't know that they make it clear enough. They have communication meetings periodically. Oftentimes, they have them in times that not every employee can attend. And that's because it's convenient for management, and it is a slow time when the guests aren't at the park. However, when they have them, I'm busy doing other stuff, and so I can't make the communications meeting. And I don't think the lower level management defines what is discussed in the communication meeting, whether it's goals or achievements. They don't communicate those far enough down. There's no memo. There's no bulletin board. There's no newsletter just for employees. Say, if you missed our meeting, this is what we discussed. There's none of that. I've asked oftentimes of my immediate manager, so what was happening in the communication meeting? Same old stuff. Well, it's been like 7 years since I've been to a communications meeting, so what's the same old stuff nowadays? Because since I've been to a communications meeting, we've gone through 2 owners.
How do your managers handle complaints or suggestions from the employees?
I think they take them all with a grain of salt. I think it depends on who the complaint is against, as far as my department goes, on how seriously they take it. If the complaint is against a management, then they sometimes will shrug it off as that's just a disgruntled employee. I've heard several times where an employee goes for an exit meeting, an exit interview with upper management, and they've made a lot of valid statements to management, and management just says, yeah, they're just a disgruntled employee, and that's the reason why they're leaving. And in fact, they do have several valid complaints. If they complain from employee to employee, I think they take them a little bit more serious because they can't have frontliners upset. I think when it comes to management, sometimes in fact, I was even told one time, we've got this settled, don't we? So we don't have to go to HR over this. So, which is a violation of policy. You're never allowed to tell your employee, yeah, let's not go to HR over this, because it's within a lower levels. If any employee, especially lower levels employee, it's within their rights to go to HR if they have a complaint against whoever.
See. Is good performance by employees recognized fairly by managers?
Not well enough. Not in my department.
So
just the other day we had 3 employees doing the exact same job. 2 of the employees were rewarded in it, but because that particular assistant supervisor didn't like the 3rd employee, that person did not reward the 3rd person. So there was a lot of bias.
There is some positive reinforcement with the reward system.
Yeah.
What kind?
A free Coke.
Free Coke, stuff like that.
On weeks that we already have free Cokes in the cafeteria for every employee.
It's funny.
Yeah, it is funny. And if you get 75 of these little free Cokes, then you can get an iPad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but nobody ever hands out enough to get 75. And that's the thing about the incentive programs. If you're going to have an incentive program, you've got to have...
Make it achievable.
Well, first of all, you got to make it achievable. 75 is achievable, but you got to have a consistency about it. Don't just willy-nilly hand things out to people and only hand them out to your friends and never make it a consistent basis. Like if you hit your goal each day, then you should get one each day. and make it available. But if you're just like, oh, I just caught you something good. Well, how many times have I done something good and you walk by and I've not gotten one of those? And so sometimes they make these prizes so great, but the managers are so stingy with their incentives. There's no way you'll ever win an iPad.
Right. Kind of has something to do with unethical behavior, but have there been any other issues with unethical behavior among the managers, and how is it dealt with?
I think so. I've heard stories throughout, and this is all hearsay, but I've heard stories throughout the years of managers having affairs with underlings or subordinates, and then those subordinates getting promoted. That's not right. So the managers get fired. And then I've heard of supervisors reading to the, let's say I'm your supervisor, I give you an evaluation on your performance this year, and you don't agree with a certain point of it, so you make a little comment, which is within your right to do on the thing, and then I, as a manager, pull your sheet of paper, and I look at it, I'm like, well, how dare him? Look at this comment he made, that he didn't agree with what I said. And then they read it, and not only to other sub-managers in there, but other employees who are your peers hear that. That's unethical.
Is there any punishment system in place in your organization to discourage unethical, negative, or any kind of behavior that contradicts the organization's goal or mission?
Sure, there's steps to be taken to correct situations. There's write-ups, performance evaluations. There's verbal and written reprimands. There's ways to correct behavior, and there's ways to do it. And those things need to be in place. And management needs to have a hand in making sure their employees are within the guidelines, but they also need to know what those guidelines are.
Right. So for the most part, you agree with these systems, just not how the managers go about.
I think it's an inconsistent system.
Inconsistent.
I think there needs to be a consistency, and I think there needs to be a way to withdraw yourself from personal attachments to people. I'll give you an example. One employee was in a meeting with, say like this, and they were leaning back in their chair, and they dozed off, and the chair just kind of rocked. All right, so the management found out, wrote that employee a severe write-up. 2 weeks later, the assistant managers or assistant supervisors went to a different meeting within HR and came back to the office and bragged to the same supervisor that they not only went to sleep during there, but they had to bump one of their friends because they started to snore in a meeting. And the supervisor laughed it off. So this employee over here gets a severe write-up, but her assistant supervisors get laughed at. Oh, that's funny. So there's an inconsistency, and there's a personal attachment.
I see that.
And another thing on that is perks. A lot of managements have different perks. And I'm a contender that if it's a rule for everybody, then it's a rule for everybody. Just because you're a manager doesn't mean you're above the same rules that your frontline new employees have to follow. So if the rules are you can't talk to guests with your sunglasses on as a frontline employee, then me as a manager needs to follow that same rule. And I think there's an inconsistency, and then there should be reprimands for that if they violate it as well.
What kind of non-financial incentives does your organization offer? Benefits, workers' comp?
Well, like any other company, they have their insurance. They pay for part of the insurance. They pay your retirement, 401k. They pay a percentage of that. They have a good health benefits package, and they have a good 401k plan. If you buy into it, you can diversify it, or you can put it all in one packet. So as far as the other stuff they do have nice packages for their employees.
So they allow the employees to actually manage their own 401k?
Sure.
That's cool. Okay, express your thoughts on the management style implemented by your managers. Example, like, is there any micromanaging?
Oh, man, wow, yeah.
Some of them?
Yeah, they'll come through, and they've not been down by, say, they've not been through my area in a month, and all of a sudden they come through, and they just start changing everything.
Yeah.
We've got to set up to where we can work it, where we know everything's at. It makes it easier, quicker for us to handle the guests, but they come sweeping through and say, oh, this is not the way it should be. And it's not that it's with outside of policy, it's they don't like it. So they come through and change it all because it doesn't look good for them and they couldn't work that way. And so I've gone to managers several times like, we're going to change things. We've got it worked where we can handle everything and make it go smoother for the employees. Why do you come through and rearrange everything? Because they think it's better when in fact it's not. And there's a lot of micromanaging, and it's gotten some better, but still they try to keep, in my department, they keep, and there's a difference between knowing what's going on and micromanaging everything that's going on. I think a manager of any sort should know what's going on in their department. But as far as knowing every detail, I'm a big proponent that if I give you a task, here's the parameters, I want you to accomplish that task. I need to be done by September 15th at 4 o'clock. And these are kind of the things I need to have done. How you do it, as long as it's within policy, I could care less. But if I go in and tell you, okay, I need you to hold the bat this way when you hit the ball, or I need you to hold the ink pen this way when you fill out the reports, that's a little too much.
And there's some who do that.
And there's some who micromanage very much that way. Which to me is a poor way of managing because it gives the employees, it doesn't allow the employees the freedom to succeed on their own or even to fail. Now that's not saying that the employee shouldn't check in with the supervisors on like, for lack of a better term, a milestone, a benchmark. We need to let them know our progress on accomplishing this task. But too many times managers want to know every single step. And if the manager has that much time where they want to know every single thing you do, then they're not doing their job well.
Do the supervisors participate in the frontline work of the people working under them regularly?
No.
No.
No, you hardly see the management in a frontline situation. As far as my department goes, in my department we have people that are specific for my job. There's 3 of us. And then to fill in the gaps, we bring in educators. Those are the people who do the tours and stand at the exhibits. We bring them in to fill in gaps that are, we cross-train them. They'll pull people from my station to fill another piece in the park, leave my station short-handed just to fill in other spots in the park while the management sits in the office, even if it's for 15, 20 minutes. And they won't come out and break or we have bumps. And what it means is I come to your exhibit to bump you to go to John's exhibit to go right on down the line. Well, if we're missing a person for a 15-minute or 20-minute, our management won't go and fill in that gap. They'll pull somebody from another place and put them into that just so they don't, or at least that's the impression that they give their frontline employees, that they have forgotten what it's like to be out in the park. And although they justify that by saying, well, we do park walks around the park, and all that means is a couple of them get together and they chit-chat while they walk around and look at everything.
The next question is, do the managers manage with the workers' best interests in mind? But I think you've given us a lot of examples.
Yeah, I don't think they do.
Just overall, no.
I think, and this is a thing to keep in mind, when you do management, and I'm a frontline employee now, but I've been in management. I've worked with businesses, and I've managed stores and all kinds of stuff. But I think when you forget the human element and you put the work ahead of the person, then you've taken your business and flip-flop it. No business is above the people that work for that business. The people of the business always come first, then the work. And I'll give you an example of this. An employee got sick, radioed and says, I'm sick. I need somebody out here now because I'm getting ready to throw up. And it said, oh, we're sending somebody out there. Well, the person couldn't wait any longer or they were going to throw up right in front of all the guests. So they run off to the bathroom, leaving their exhibit. Management came in, wrote that person up for leaving their exhibit because, well, you should never leave your exhibit. What if AZA comes through and sees that unmanned? That person said, well, I could have thrown up right there. Well, you're not supposed to do that either. then they caught them in a catch-22. I get written up for leaving the exhibit, but then I'd get in trouble for throwing up right there at the exhibit. So they chose to leave, and they didn't even make it to the restroom. They ended up throwing up in the bushes. But that person got written up, and that's a clear example of putting the work ahead of the people. You've got to take into consideration that when you're working, each person is not a number. They're an individual. They're not just an employee. They're the heartbeat of your company. If you didn't have employees, there's no amount of guests going to make up for that coming in. If you don't have happy employees, then that's eventually going to translate into the happiness of your employees, or your customers, no matter what that is, and even the quality of work, depending on what that is.
For the past 9 years of working for this organization, what
are you not allowed to say organization, or you just say this organization? Because I've said SeaWorld
I'll say
a lot.
SeaWorld. I'll say SeaWorld from now on. It's just how the question's written.
No, it's all right.
Very subjective questions.
I'm just busting his chops.
What are the main reasons that made you stay with the company?
I've got higher aspirations. Right now, although I do like working with the public, I've got different aspirations to where this affords me to be able to do what I do outside of work.
Right.
It provides me, doing comedy. I make pretty good doing comedy, but just not enough to pay all my bills. So this affords me to pay a lot of stuff off so that in the next year or so, that I could be on the road full time traveling, or if I just happen to hit the lottery.
Has there been any particular reason why you consider leaving the company?
Oh, I've considered leaving several times. Mainly because I think sometimes the management were unethical. Sometimes I think the management were. I got in trouble one time because I didn't ask any questions in a class. We were given a class. My whole team was, and they said, "Oh, you need to ask questions." We're like, "We're not going to ask any questions unless we need a question asked." Well, afterwards, we got in trouble for asking questions. So we go to the next class. We ask and make comments in the question, then we get in trouble for making too many comments. So there's a lot of times when I've gotten fed up to where I'm not going into work the next day. But I go back in and do my job and try not to let it affect me as I work with the guests. And I think I do an alright job working with the guests. They all seem to laugh and carry on.
This is the last one.
Last question, yeah.
If you are asking to provide some advice to your organization to improve overall performance, what would you say? You've already done this a lot throughout the interview.
Yeah, well, my key thing would be customer focus and communication skills. Improve your communication with the employees and make it more detailed, not micromanage detail, but more detailed with your goals, and look at your organization through a customer's eyes. Because oftentimes, a lot of companies, they just come in, and I've even consulted churches. I said, when you walk into your church building or walk into your church property, look at it through a visitor's eyes. Same thing with a company. When you walk into a restaurant, what's the first thing you see? A lot of people, if they'll walk into the bathroom, make it the first stop. And if the bathroom's dirty, they figure if the bathroom's just dirty, then I can imagine what the kitchen's going to look like. So you got to look through communication and customer eyes.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap things up for us. We appreciate your time.
All right.
For this interview.
Thank you so much.
That was very informative. It's a lot.
Well, I hope it works out.